I never believed in ghosts. Until the night I took the worst job of my life. My name is Alex. 6 months ago my life completely fell apart. The factory where I had worked for nearly 8 years shut down with almost no warning. Hundreds of us were left without income overnight. I spent weeks sending out applications every single day, but nothing came back. Rent was 3 months behind. My truck kept breaking down. The fridge was empty most days. Eviction notices were piling up on my apartment door like some kind of cruel collection. Desperation had become my new normal. That's when I found the ad on a sketchy, rarely updated job board. The title alone should have made me stop and think twice. Night Warden, Ebonmere Memorial Grounds, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. $42 per hour. Must follow instructions perfectly. Most applicants don't last. The pay was almost double what I was used to. It seemed too good to be true, but I was in no position to be picky. I laughed at the dramatic warning at the bottom and applied the same day. The interview was scheduled for dusk. As I drove through the tall, rusted iron gates of Ebonmere Memorial Grounds, the sun was setting behind the hills, casting long, dark shadows across rows of weathered tombstones. Even in the fading light, the place felt wrong. Heavy, ancient, and somehow watchful. Mr. Caldwell was waiting for me in a small stone building just outside the main perimeter. He was a thin man in his late 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and eyes that looked like they hadn't seen real rest in years. He didn't smile. He didn't offer small talk. He simply slid the contract across the desk and placed a laminated card beside it. Ebonmere Night Warden Rules. Rule 1. Chain and padlock the main gates by 10:15 p.m. exactly. Never open them again until 6 a.m. No matter who knocks, who begs, who cries, who screams your name, or claims to be injured. Rule 2. The Eastern Hill floodlights must stay on all night. If they fail, flip the backup switch inside the warden's cabin and stay inside. Never go out to check them. Rule 3. After midnight, if you hear children laughing near the old fountain, close every shutter, turn the white noise machine to maximum, and do not look outside until the laughter completely stops. Whatever you do, do not answer them. Rule 4. Row 17. The sunken marble graves is strictly forbidden after 1 a.m. If anything moves there, write it in the logbook and pretend you saw nothing. Rule 5. The woman in the faded blue coat walks the path to the Holloway Mausoleum. Do not offer help. If she speaks first, reply only with, "I am bound by the rules." Nothing else. Rule 6. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the old groundskeeper in dirty overalls pushes his wheelbarrow along the fence. He is not human. Do not look at him. Do not speak. He leaves only if completely ignored. Rule 7. Never, ever accept any gift left on the cabin doorstep. Burn it immediately in the metal barrel behind the building before dawn. If you touch it, the debt is yours. Rule 8. If the chapel bells ring on their own, your shift ends early. Run to the service gate and leave. Do not look back. Do not return for anything you left behind. Caldwell watched me carefully as I read the list twice. His voice was low and serious. The ones who follow these rules usually survive. The ones who don't become part of the grounds. We've had many wardens. Very few complete their contracts. I signed the contract that same evening. I needed the money more than I needed to feel safe. The warden's cabin was surprisingly sturdy and well equipped for its purpose. Thick stone walls, reinforced windows that could be fully shuttered, a heavy deadbolt on the door, a simple cot in the corner, a coffee maker, a small desk, and most importantly, a thick logbook filled with entries from previous wardens. Some entries were neat and professional. Others ended abruptly with shaky handwriting. Single words like, "They're here," or desperate pleas to follow the rules. Ebonmere Memorial Grounds was much larger than I had imagined. It stretched across several rolling hills covered with thousands of graves. Some were simple weathered headstones, others were grand family mausoleums near the center. Ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss swayed gently in the night breeze, looking like hanging bodies in the moonlight. In the distance stood the old chapel tower, silent and imposing. The land had a dark history. It used to be a quarantine station during a terrible fever outbreak in the 1880s. Thousands of people died here and were buried quickly, sometimes in unmarked or mass graves. The ground remembered. I spent the first nights forcing myself to stay alert. I patrolled the main paths with my powerful flashlight, checked the gates multiple times every hour, drank coffee by the gallon to stay awake, and wrote safe, boring entries in the logbook. Gates locked on time. No incidents. Heavy fog tonight. Everything felt manageable at first. Until night 4. At 12:35 a.m. I was refilling my thermos in the cabin when I heard it. Children laughing. Hi. Sweet, joyful giggles drifting clearly from the direction of the old dry fountain on the eastern hill. A little girl's voice whispered so close it sounded like she was standing right outside the cabin wall. Come play with us. It's warmer in the dark. Why won't you come play with us? My heart slammed against my ribs. I followed Rule 3 exactly. Slammed every shutter shut, cranked the white noise machine to maximum, and sat on the cot with my back to the window, eyes fixed on the floor. The laughter circled the cabin for nearly 40 minutes. Sometimes it sounded like they were right outside the door. Sometimes it moved around the building. When it finally stopped, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely write in the logbook. That night changed everything. I stopped thinking this was just a weird, high-paying job. I started believing the rules existed for a very good reason. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in discipline and paranoia. I learned the rhythm of the place. I knew exactly when the children would start laughing. I knew when the woman in the faded blue coat would appear on the path leading to the Holloway Mausoleum. I learned to keep my head down and eyes on the ground when the groundskeeper passed at exactly 3:17 a.m. with his empty wheelbarrow. I followed every rule strictly. No exceptions. I was proud of myself. I was surviving where so many others apparently had failed. The fat paychecks hitting my account every week made it feel worth it. I even started sleeping better during the day, telling myself I had figured out the system. I was getting cocky. Then came the night that destroyed me. It was a stormy Thursday night. Rain hammered the roof of the cabin like angry fists trying to break in. Thunder rolled in the distance. I locked the gates at 10:15 p.m. sharp, fighting against the strong wind. At 11:50 p.m. the eastern hill floodlights flickered once, twice, then died completely. I threw the backup switch inside the cabin. The lights came back on, but noticeably weaker, casting long, sickly shadows across the graves. At 1:07 a.m. she appeared, the woman in the faded blue coat, soaking wet even though the rain wasn't falling near her. Her eyes carried centuries of grief and something much worse, hunger. She stood much closer than ever before, staring straight through the cabin window as if she could see directly into my soul. I stayed silent, following Rule 5 perfectly. At 3:17 a.m. the groundskeeper appeared. He stopped directly in front of my window, empty eye sockets staring straight at me. He tipped his rotting cap slowly and smiled for the first time. Then at 4 a.m. I stepped outside to empty the trash into the metal barrel behind the cabin, rain pouring down on me. That's when I saw it on the doorstep. A small, beautiful silver locket engraved with the letter E. It was heavy, warm to the touch despite the cold rain, and seemed to pulse with its own faint life. Rule 7 screamed in my head. I knew better. I knew it in my bones. But I picked it up anyway. I slipped it into my pocket and told myself I would burn it at dawn. I lied to myself. That single decision cost me my life. The next night everything went wrong from the very beginning. The children's laughter started earlier than usual and much louder, right against the shutters. The white noise machine struggled to drown them out. Their voices called my name. They begged me to come play. They told me it was warmer in the dark and that I would never be alone again. Then the woman in the faded blue coat appeared only 10 feet from my cabin door. Her voice vibrated inside my skull like ice water injected directly into my veins. You have my daughter's locket. Give it back, and maybe I'll let you leave this place alive. I forced the safe words out through gritted teeth. I am bound by the rules. She smiled with far too many teeth. Not anymore. The debt is yours now. At 3:17 a.m. the groundskeeper didn't just pass by. He stopped directly in front of the cabin window and stood there for a full minute, empty eye sockets staring straight into mine. He tipped his rotting cap slowly and smiled again. At 3:40 a.m. the chapel bells in the old tower began tolling. Slow, angry, and completely wrong. The sound vibrated deep in my bones. Rule 8 screamed at me to run immediately through the service gate and never look back. But the locket was burning a hole in my pocket and the crushing guilt wouldn't let me leave. I felt responsible. I had to fix what I had done. I made the fatal mistake. I grabbed my flashlight and walked straight into row 17. The fog was so thick I could barely see my own hands in front of me. The air smelled of wet earth mixed with something far worse. Something rotting and ancient. Every headstone in row 17 seemed to lean toward me, as if the dead were listening to my footsteps and whispering my name. The temperature dropped sharply with every step I took. My breath came out in visible clouds. In the center of the row stood a half-sunken marble crypt I had never noticed before. The iron door hung open like an invitation into darkness. A little girl's voice drifted out from inside, sweet, terrible, and full of hunger. "Mommy said you brought me a new friend." I stepped inside. The silver locket suddenly snapped open violently in my hand. Inside was a faded photograph of the little girl smiling, and standing right behind her was the woman in the blue coat with completely dead black eyes. Freezing fingers clamped onto my shoulder from behind. The woman whispered directly into my ear, her breath like winter wind on my neck. "You touched it. You accepted it. Now you belong here with us." The crypt suddenly filled with them. Dozens of translucent children with hollow smiles and two wide mouths. The groundskeeper, hundreds of others, all the previous wardens who had broken the rules before me. Their voices rose together in a horrifying, overlapping chorus of welcome. "Stay with us. Stay with us forever." I ran. They didn't need to chase me. Every single path I took circled back to row 17 no matter which direction I turned. The main gates wouldn't open no matter how hard I rattled them. My truck in the staff lot refused to start. My phone had zero signal. At 5:12 a.m. I barely made it back to the cabin. I barricaded the door with everything I could find, shaking uncontrollably, and called the emergency number with trembling fingers. A calm, recorded voice answered. "You violated protocol. Your final paycheck has been processed. Welcome to the permanent staff. The children are still laughing outside right now." The woman in the blue coat stands patiently at the window, holding her hand out for the locket. Her dead eyes watching me write this final entry. I'm writing this while the sky outside slowly turns a sickly gray. My shift should have ended hours ago, but the sun doesn't seem to want to rise for me anymore. If you ever see that job ad for the night warden position at Ebonmere Memorial Grounds, keep scrolling. Do not apply. Do not even read it fully. And if you're crazy enough to take it anyway, follow every single rule without exception, especially Rule 7. Whatever you do, do not touch the gifts they leave on the doorstep. Because the dead don't want your labor, they want company. And once you accept their offering, the position becomes eternal. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the logbook. My hands were still shaking. The laughter outside never stopped. It moved around the cabin in circles, sometimes right at the door, sometimes at the windows. The woman in the blue coat remained standing there, motionless, her hand outstretched, waiting patiently for the locket. I looked down at the silver locket on the table. It had grown warmer. The engraving, E, seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the cabin. I thought about everything that had happened. The first night I heard the children, the woman appearing closer each time, the groundskeeper smiling, the moment I picked up the locket despite knowing Rule 7. The regret hit me like a wave. I had been warned. Caldwell had been clear. The logbook had hundreds of entries from men and women who came before me. Some lasted weeks, some lasted only a few nights. None of them left. The sky outside was turning a sickly gray, but the sun refused to rise properly. It stayed in that strange twilight state, as if the cemetery itself wouldn't allow morning to come for me. I picked up the pen one last time and wrote my final entry. Followed most rules. Broke Rule 7, accepted the gift. The debt is mine now. If anyone reads this, do not make the same mistake. I closed the logbook. The laughter grew louder. The woman's hand pressed against the window. The groundskeeper stood beside her now. More figures appeared in the fog. Dozens of them, all previous wardens. I'm still here. I will always be here. If you ever see that job ad, I beg you, keep scrolling. Close the page. Find another job. Anything is better than this. And if, like me, you are desperate enough to take it anyway, follow every single rule, especially Rule 7. Do not touch the gifts. End of shift report. Night Warden Alex. Redacted. Status. Still on duty time remaining. Forever.